Hey there, I'm Garth. I'm the animation tutor. I create a whole bunch of courses and mentorships that are specifically built for students to build their portfolio to get into their top choice animation schools. I've been helping young artists become animators for over 10 years now, and I've gotten over 100 students into colleges like Sheridan, Seneca, Capilano, RISD, SVA, CalArts, Gobelin, and the Animation Workshop in Denmark. I've taught students from all around the globe get into these incredible animation schools, and honestly, it's never hard to get students excited about animation because it's such an incredible medium. So check out my website to see all the courses and mentorships that I offer, or book a meeting with me and I can kind of go through all the different learning resources that we have with you. Thanks for listening and enjoy the student interview.
Hello, hello.
Hey Aaliyah, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Pretty good. I bet you're a little more like relaxed about things now. It's been, I guess, like almost a month since you've gotten the good news, right?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Um, yeah, I don't know if you'll ever just get, yeah, it's hard to say because it's just such a big thing, and like I spent a whole year working towards it, and then
Yeah,
boom. So
yeah.
it's exciting though. I'm happy.
That's
It's
great.
great.
I'm glad you're still able to have some of that excitement. I know for some it's like a big burst right away, and then they're like, okay, now I just need to kind of get everything. And you're international, right? So you need to like get
Yeah,
all of your stuff in order. Well, it's nice that things are shaping up, and yeah, still I'm so glad that you were accepted. There were some other international students that I mentored that were in the 90s, which is,
hmm
in almost
yeah,
every other case is an acceptance, but they were 91 or 92 and
yeah,
one is on the wait list and one is just rejected at 91 and I was just shocked because like for me I find that honestly it's extremely hard to distinguish sometimes between like yeah, a 91 or 92 and like a 96 or a 98
right,
something like that. Like I between like a 60 and a 90, sure. Big difference. I can usually tell a lot of things
right.
like that. But that small margin of error makes my job like more and more difficult every year.
Oh, for sure.
And honestly, that's why I mentioned in our Discord chat that I am always worried. I'm not necessarily well, no, I am worried that like, something I say might negatively affect the score, but it's more just like I don't know. Like I with some students I'm like for you I was like absolutely totally confident.
All things.
But then so much of the time it's like I don't know. I especially
Yeah,
now and especially because you're international, yeah, I can't ever truly say because it depends who's marking, and
right.
that is a tricky thing to do.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
because it's all human. You're human, they're
Yeah.
human, that there's so much room for error. So like
Yeah.
you're very helpful in a lot of areas, and I don't think I would have scored nearly as high, especially on figure drawing, if you hadn't like you do have some sorts of ins. Like you were like,
Sure.
oh, I know I think his name's Mark, the guy who
Yeah.
does the figure
The
drawing.
lifetime
You're like,
teacher.
I know he'll like this figure in particular. Like in
Hmm.
that sense, you do have insider knowledge that's really helpful. You're also someone who's graduated, you know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But you're also like you're human. So
Yeah.
please, at least with this my storyboard, don't feel any regret
Yeah.
or pressure or
For
anything
sure.
because
Well, I appreciate that.
yeah.
I loved your story, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it eventually. But
Okay.
so how I usually like to do this is we'll look at your score sheet first, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
then we'll just kind of go through it chronologically, piece by piece.
Alrighty.
And if there's any something you want me to reference somewhere else, because I know you made that other folder, then we can. Wow, just just wild. Yeah, I mean. Yeah, it will forever be the mystery, that storyboard. But nonetheless,
Yeah.
fantastic mark.
Thank you.
Everything else I did call when we did your extensive portfolio review, I was like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I was at 100%, but I'm
Thank
glad I
you.
was accurate with almost all of these things. So that's good to know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It we'll get to the storyboard for sure. There's
Sure.
some yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah. Oh, this one's down here. Huh. Why is it oh, I see. You know what? We'll just get this one to be up near the rest
All right.
just for this. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so So two jet your two these are the two gestures.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, both convey a nice sense of movement. This one actually in the lower and upper body, like both the arms really look like they're moving, or she's almost like dropped something or trying to catch it. And then the legs could be almost moving too, like in a sort of walk stance. And then
Thank you. Yeah.
this one, it almost looks like she's like conjuring something, or like there's some kind of something going on. But it's a beautiful pose. It's always nice in a gesture when you can capture like a limb inside the actual form shape itself and still have the body, proportionally accurate. Like the arm is
Mm,
kind of cutting the two sides of the torso in half, and but it's still the torso on its own, remove the arm, still looks great, still works. So that's wonderful.
thank you.
These are great. Then some your longer poses. Awesome.
Yeah. So like I was kind of saying to you earlier, I'm kind of surprised of my score in
Mm,
particular because there's some anatomical errors and it's not very clean and I think they really
mm,
like cleanness. So I was kind of I hadn't really seen stuff that looked like mine marking a 10 out of 10. So
sure.
this really was surprising. I thought if I was gonna I would lose the most marks in figure drawing. Like I was really like, okay, I'm probably getting a 6 out of 10 or something like that.
Oh boy.
Um,
No way. But
I I put off going to the studio for too
mm,
long, so I got really comfortable drawing from pictures at home, sitting in my bed because I don't have an easel.
sure.
And so then when I actually went, not only was like there more pressure because there's a bunch of people around, but I didn't know
Yeah.
how to draw standing up on an easel and like that. Like so it was I had to adjust to
Okay.
that. And
Yeah.
then there was also a lot of issues in trying to get dynamic poses from the studio. Like they just didn't
Oh yeah,
have the
yeah.
most. So I had to like go up to the instructor and be like, hey, can we have like really dynamic 3 minute poses? And they changed the entire like pre like the studio for me. Like they're like
Wow.
announcing to the class, there's a student with a project and we're just gonna add 3 minute thing. So if you are in a studio, I do
Wow.
recommend asking because I think the 3 minute poses are the best for capturing stuff.
Yeah,
And it wasn't until like I started asking that I got some dynamic poses. Even
sure.
with asking, sometimes they were not dynamic at all.
Yeah.
Um, but I do recommend just advocating in that sense and also get into the studio as fast as you can. Like do the live
Yeah.
figure drawings from the start and start learning from there.
Mm,
And practice at home, but if you can even just do it once a week, like
yeah.
that's great. Um,
That's so wonderful that you were able to do that. And also so wonderful that you did the thing that I'm always telling people to do, but I don't think anyone ever does, which is that you ask the instructor or even ask the model if there's no instructor and just like, very politely just say,
yeah,
what you're there. Because a lot of people are just there to like draw and improve and have fun and
right.
but if you have a like I've got this thing to do that's super important and everyone else can still have a great time doing this too, but I have this
Hmm.
time that I really need to focus right now then often, almost all the time, I think they're very sympathetic to that.
Yeah, I did feel bad for them sometimes because they were very exhausted after doing action poses for 3 minutes. I was like,
Sure.
thank you so much. You're the best. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, other than that, I started engaging figure drawing pretty early on and I upped
Mm,
it to like doing an hour a day for
okay.
5 weekdays. And I would study and copy the drawings in the Classic Human Anatomy by Valerie Winslow.
Yeah.
It's a
Wonderful.
really great book. Highly
Hmm.
recommend. I learned everything I knew from it. I didn't know how to draw with charcoal,
Yeah.
like or Conte, I mean figure drawing,
Yeah.
so I had to learn that, and I do recommend like learning by copying at the
Yeah.
start. It's
Sure.
really great.
That's wonderful. Great, great tips. Um, I can't remember, did you also use Bridgman at all, or was it just that one
No,
book?
yeah, I just used Valerie Winslow,
Okay.
and like
Great.
literally before every single live figure drawing session, I would just copy some of her poses, and that's how I kind of got
Wonderful.
into the thing. So
Wow.
I really do recommend because then you can learn where she makes the marks, where she does
Yeah.
this, and her style is. You said it's like the textbook they use at Sheridan, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So like it automatically will be something that they like, I think.
Sure.
So
I think so. And you also mentioned earlier that like you thought they like cleaner strokes. And I've seen a
Hmm.
lot of port I've been looking through every portfolio I can find online from this year. And I have noticed that there have been a wide range. Some are super clean,
Really
some are very even noisier than yours by quite a stretch and also
interesting.
scored really well. So I think this is one of those stylistic things that teachers don't care too much about. They mostly just want to see the structure and the anatomy and
Okay,
all the
that's
same things that
awesome.
everyone's always saying. So it's nice because there was I almost was convinced of that too because of I saw some
Yeah,
perfectly marked figure drawings from previous years and all of them were super clean. And I was like, whoa,
right.
this is like so different for me because I remember like when I applied and there everything was much more loose. But they
Hmm.
still are totally fine with that, as it turns out. It's just, yeah,
Oh,
they
awesome.
just need, I
All right,
guess,
messy drawers out there, you have hope.
yeah, totally. But I just want to qualify that just for anyone listening, not to like, there's a nice degree of restraint that is always good too. Like if you're too
Yeah.
messy and too wild with your strokes, then it will just be ambiguous and it'll be hard to see where the actual stroke is sort of meant to be because. Yeah, so just caution against ambiguity. These are obviously still super clear, and you do have some quite fine strokes in there as well if you look especially in your longer ones. Like there are sharper strokes even in the midst of busier ones underneath. So yeah, I don't know. This is still relatively clean as far as like a short pose goes, I think, but
Thank
um
you.
hand drawings. I remember you had quite a few redos with these. You wanted to
Oh
really
yeah.
get it right.
Yeah, because I did it digitally originally, but I knew they liked traditional more, so I was like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'll do
Yeah,
it
plus those are
traditional.
just the objects, right? Like your hand drawing was still you
Right,
did
right,
draw it
yeah.
traditionally. So
S-
not a bad workflow. I mean, it worked. It worked for you.
Yeah. I did this at the start, and I do recommend that because I feel like this isn't something that you're gonna really grow in as you progress in your portfolio. You might if you're out of practice with drawing, but the kind of technical skill to draw a hand isn't something you're like gonna vastly improve in from drawing a character turnaround or something. So
Sure.
like it's nice to get something done at the start. And so this was the first thing I finished. And then I revisited it and corrected a few things
Hmm.
at the end, and then
Yeah.
I submitted it. So
Great.
I do think this is like one of the good first things to knock off.
Hmm.
Um, just lots of brainstormings to get those dynamic poses. It's hard to find ones that aren't like really used.
Yeah.
I had Garth telling me that one's very common. Might like this one, so
Yeah.
that was nice to have him to help.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
but I just was like, okay, I want to tell a story, so I did Checkmate, and it was difficult to get a dynamic pose where you're like throwing it down. Is it
Hmm.
realistic? Could it happen? Maybe not. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to have pretty good aim. Um,
Yeah.
but um,
Hey, this is the
it
world of
is,
animation.
yeah, exactly. But I do like the idea of trying to tell a story even with the hands, I guess.
Yeah. That's great. And I love that in both of these, actually, each finger is really doing a different thing. Like in this one in particular, you could have had them all just kind of like in a row, like
Mhm.
that. But no, each one is slightly bent. The one, and I love the pressing index finger, especially like you really see that
Thank you.
the bend there. And then the next one more relaxed, and then the next one is up a little bit, and then the pinky's pulling back the most. So there's this great range and sort of gradation of movement across each finger. And then here too. I mean, these two could, again, another opportunity where it could have been really boring and they could have just been parallel and look basically the same, but one slightly smaller. But instead, we see this kind of pressing happening. There's an asymmetry to it. We see more of one side of the finger on the ring finger and then the other side of the pinky. So it has this kind of rotation, inward rotation to it that I really like. So yeah
Thank you. I
and,
appreciate
and,
that.
and great depiction of softness versus hardness. We talked a lot about that. I remember of just like let's
Yeah.
see the texture inside the hand and let's see the hardness of the top of it when there's the knuckles and bones and such.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great.
Thank you.
Actually, that's far. So character rotation, I believe, which is back here. Um, Here she is, Eleanor.
Eleanor.
Awesome. This is so
So this
great.
is
Wait,
Eleanor Wagner. You'll be seeing a lot of her.
yes, we will. Yeah. So great. Nice prop. So another thing that I would just want to mention for everyone that is always curious about this, Absolutely, you can use props. That's not a,
Yeah.
just don't have it like obscure the character a crazy amount, but this is totally fine. And the prop is a nice little storied item. And even we got a second character rotation here. Let's not forget the frog on her head. So yeah, this is great. Great little
Thank
story.
you. Yeah, speaking of the prop, I was actually it originally, I don't know if you remember, it was originally towered really high, all of the
Mm,
jars
yeah,
because of that one concept piece. And that you were like, okay, that prop is taking too much. So
yeah.
I did make it smaller, and I think that really helped. Now, here's the thing that I really do want to emphasize is, and I do have some of these in the reference progress materials,
Mm,
is emphasize clarity over complete utter accuracy. Because while I was doing the wagon perspective, well, no, it moves decently slower than Eleanor would. It's not completely accurate. Let's look at if it was accurate. If you go into the
sure.
if I did do all of the measurements and yeah, that one, the middle one,
Okay.
that's what would have happened.
Ah, gotcha.
And that just that can't you can't do that. That
This is a great point. I'm so glad you included this because this does happen a lot where there's something in the way. The most simple example of this is like for the fox, for the
mm-hmm,
storyboard character, he's got his fluffs that come out to the side. And so what
mm-hmm,
does that look like if you draw it from the side? It looks very, you wouldn't see it. You just see a little point and then a circle or
right.
something. But that's not how character design works. You
Yeah.
have to kind of like move things out of the way or just, there's a point where you need to flip things, like even Eleanor's hair there. I don't, do you flip it at some point?
I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, in this case, it can always face forward, but there are, oh no, it is flipped right there. See? So
Oh,
it's pointing
oh yeah,
outwards
that
here.
that thing, yeah.
And then here you flip it. There's not a gradation. It's not pointing right towards us with a little dot in the middle at some point.
Right.
You just flip it. You choose that point when you're going to flip something, and then and then each one has to be slightly more exaggerated in that direction, whatever that might be. So there are times absolutely when you have to kind of go with what is a nice read and what can still basically, like when you look at this, you don't see that inaccuracy, as you sort of stated, it feels totally accurate. It's unquestioned. But
Thank you.
yeah, it's nice that to emphasize that if you're ever having a drawing issue where something is blocking something, you're like, oh, we're gonna lose half the pose if we do this. Move,
Yeah.
just move it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Another
Just
example is like the arm outwards, right? Where you have an arm like this from the front, and then when you
right.
turn, it's like that. It's like, well, just push it back. You can always change subtle things
Yeah.
like that, and no one will notice. So,
Yes. I also included because I feel like the process to make this is kind of tricky, but I
mhm.
included videos of how I actually got here. So
Mm.
I first
Wow.
started with the sketches in Photoshop. Okay, well that's the one with the overlay,
Okay.
but the other one
Okay.
has my different processes. So I started the second round is so the second one there, that's the ones I did, and you can see the towering jars. That was the original
Oh
idea.
yeah.
Um, that was in Photoshop. And then I brought it into Toon Boom and I did a
Okay.
bunch of measurements. You can see the lines and then the
Sure.
circles and then all of the different ones. And then I got the base forms done and then I
Wow.
did the lines on top. So that way I could make sure everything was, and that's where I got too hung up on accuracy, as you can see with the wagon. It's
Huh.
just moving completely as accurate as possible
Sure.
and it just doesn't work.
Interesting.
Um, so you can measure it and try to make it as accurate as possible. That's good, but also make sure that it's clear.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, circles, lines, squares for standing, they're all nice ways to figure out measurements. If you're doing something that's on the ground next to her, that it's a bit more tricky
Yeah.
to find the perspective for that, but
Sure.
you can get there for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. Fascinating. That's really cool to see. I never even saw this. I mean, I saw each iteration obviously as we were going, but to see it all together like this, it's neat to kind of see how the whole process worked. So that's
yeah,
really great. All right, let's have a look at your short animation, which is next.
alrighty.
Wow. This is incredible. Yeah. This I It reminds me so much of a student I had several years ago who actually I think reviewed your work at some point as
Oh
through
yeah?
the extensive portfolio review. Sarah, she did one where it wasn't this, but it was it was almost like playing tennis with some other object that's on the other side of the
Yeah.
screen, and it was like batting this little ball around with its antenna as like the thing that to hit it, and just the rapid movement that you're pulling off here and the skewing. Let's try to get some poses actually. Ah, yeah, like the rounded the skewing of it. Oh, nice. Yeah, I
Thank
love
you.
that. It's so great to see the individual frames where, yeah, it's
There's a
twisting.
smear
It's
frame in there somewhere.
oh boy, that'd be great to get.
It's where he's shaking his head. It's there. I just it's it's on ones there, so it's hard
Okay, it's
to
gonna be super hard to get. Oh yeah. Okay.
you
Well,
can
yeah,
kind
that's
of see it,
great.
but yeah, so yes, I am on ones here. So it's on twos and ones.
Sure.
Um, they don't specify what frame rate you have to be.
No. Yeah, of course.
So I prefer animating on ones so that I can then put some like faster frames for
Yeah.
easing and stuff like that when I want
Hmm.
to, but it's technically primarily on twos.
That's a really great point to highlight there. It's just like that's the whole point of animating on twos. And I want to emphasize this because a lot of students they start animating at 12 frames per second on ones. So it's
Mhm.
sort of the same as animating on twos at 24 frames per second, but the difference and the better why it's better to do the 24 frames is that you can, if you ever need to, you can go down to ones and you can animate
Yes.
precisely and for especially for quick motion, which is exactly when ones was utilized in actual feature animation. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, for sure. And then I also think it's interesting. I noticed with every single character design for the short animation that they've given, there's always one part of it that can be utilized for follow through. So here
Yeah.
it's the antenna, for the
Hmm.
juice box, it was the straw, for the toaster, it was the cord. And I
Yeah.
think you really, really want to emphasize that because you're supposed to use all the principles of animation.
Sure.
So having follow through, I think, is the one missed the most, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's nice to really have it. I think it just generally makes it look more fun.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and I do,
Absolutely.
yeah. So also the grid is really hard to get, and it's not very constant here, but it's very
Mhm.
difficult to get it consistent. So
Oh, the grid of the front of the screen.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the nine
Ah,
buttons.
I mean, it's the animation is never totally accurate. Just ask Disney when some people go through and pause the freeze frames.
Yeah.
But yeah, great. Okay, perfect animation. All right, I think yeah, storyboard is next,
uh,
and then
yes.
right, let's just double check. It's been
Yeah,
a
yeah,
week.
yeah. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So
Here it
storyboard.
is, the infamous storyboard.
Yeah.
So to the folks out there who, so everyone who doesn't know, basically, there I have two storyboards. This one and there was a runner up
Do you
of
have
one
it
called
here in
Garage
the
Dale. Yeah, it's in the
great.
other one. This is where I lost all my marks. This is a 16 out of 20,
Sure.
the storyboard.
Here's
This
the
was
other
the
one.
other one that was potentially, it needed a lot of changes, but I ended up going with the other one.
Hmm.
I think the reason I lost the marks on the other one is because the reason I chose it is because it's endearing.
Hmm.
It's a brother fox coming to his sister and being like, "I love knights. Oh my gosh, I wish I could be one, but I can't." And then the sister fox is like, what if I could make his dream a reality?" And then she does. But
Hmm.
the one, it doesn't really fit the prompt too well, and especially in readability. Like it's just it all depends on you seeing that book. That's kind of something I think it was Connor who said it. Connor was one of the people who reviewed me, right?
Kieran.
Kieran, I'm so sorry, Kieran.
Hmm.
Um, he said that it all hinges on that one thing. He voted for the other one.
Yeah,
I should listen to him,
sure.
but I liked this one too much. But
Sure.
if you look at what they score on, they don't score on story really.
Yeah. Okay.
And so because it's not clear enough, there's not as much a variety of shots,
Hmm.
and it's just like the story itself feels harder to read. It misses the point of the storyboard.
Hmm.
You can get it. Everyone who I did show it got it, but it took some zooming in, and it never was completely immediately accurate with what I immediately wanted to be read.
Hmm.
You
Okay.
could get the gist of brother wants knights
Oh.
and sister makes night house for him, so they can play make believe.
Hmm.
But they don't even get the entire story until the last panel. Every time they're like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a there she's making a, and I think you want it to be readable the whole time. Um
Hmm.
and so yeah, disappointing, yeah, but also I do think it's fair.
Hmm.
And in a general sense, I wish it was more. I mean, I think it was technically achieved decently well. I think some of the times they're off model. Um,
Oh,
but I
wow.
can see why they wanted more clarity than story. Um,
Hmm.
even if it makes you feel happy, I guess don't do it. The risk isn't always worth it.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, but yeah, as far as brainstorming, if you go into the progress thingy, I
Hmm.
have the if you click the PDF first, basically how I figure it, because it's really daunting to all of a sudden be given a prompt and just be like, make a storyboard. So
Hmm.
I made a bunch of different ideas in a
This is so
brainstorming. I was like,
great.
okay,
I'm glad you brought this. I remember looking at this a while back.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just okay, here's an idea. Is it creative? Is it difficult? What are the critiques? And so it's just 2 pages of me just kind of brainstorming, getting ideas. I went to Garth with it, and he was like, I like this one. I think this one's good. The ones that
Hmm.
I rated good, I was like, okay, maybe I should try these. So then you'll
Yeah.
see in the next page, I do 9 different versions, three of each of the three ideas that I selected.
Oh, I
Um,
see. So this one, I guess.
yeah. And so this was, and they're really fast, they're really messy, and they're just to
Yeah.
get ideas down
Yeah.
for
This is
each of
so
the three
great.
ideas I selected.
Hmm.
Um, then we went over it. We were like, okay, there's only two here that we think might, that there's not a clear winner between the baby brother and the garage sale. So we'll
Hmm.
just keep finagling with those two.
Yeah.
And so I did. This is me trying to figure out, okay, what are like the actual frames that I really want to emphasize?
Yeah.
The garage sale one was pretty easy. The TBD is just going to be one of those four that you see on the right. I ended up
Hmm.
going with the top right. And
Yeah.
then lower down, it's just like the baby brother ones, trying to figure out which ones I want to
Sure.
do for that.
One thing I just want to emphasize for a moment here is that, first of all, such a great workflow. And I honestly hope everyone learns from this that watches this because this is such a thorough way to do this. One thing that I did find tricky when I was looking through this is that, and we can't help this, obviously, we can't change this,
Right,
but there, like you end up as you're writing this, Aaliyah, you end up liking some of these more than others, right?
right.
So you put a little extra polish in the description. But something as simple as that. Just I guess what I'm emphasizing is not to discount something like this. I'm just taking this one as a general example.
Yeah,
Just because it's not fully worked out. Even in
right.
written form, it doesn't necessarily need to be fully worked out. These are just the kind of jumping off points. So I guess like I if I were to do this again, I would like I don't know. I don't even know what the solution here is other than to try to give every idea an equal amount of like attention or like effort
Yeah.
and this happens even in the real work world in some ways. Like sometimes when you hand a bunch of logos to a client or something, some of them are just not as polished as others. And some artists do this intentionally so that they'll get the one that they like picked, right? But
Mm,
I don't know. In this case, when you're just doing this for yourself, you're your own art director, you kind of need to give every idea the maximum possible effort to propel it along because who knows, right? Like that's a hard thing to do. And it's hard not to have biases even early on. Wow.
yeah,
But this
for
is
sure.
such a great way to go to just like give it every possible crack you can at it. And you know,
Thank
that's
you.
that's that's what kind of helped you feel solid with your choice.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate it. Um,
This
there
is
was
great. Yeah.
you can tell there was a lot more effort put into the Brother Castle one from the start. So
Sure.
there what you're saying, very, very true.
Mhm.
Like I developed the covers of the Knights of King Arthur. Um, like you can just tell. I just put two. I just was. I my heart was connected to this one. But
Yeah.
I made them a whole house. It's not in that one. Like I did whole normal backgrounds, then I revamped
Mhm.
them and made it so that they lived in a tree. Like
Yeah.
I I wanted this one, but I
Mhm.
think what you're saying is very true. You need to make sure that you're also aware of, okay, but why? And
Mhm.
what are the ones that I might be neglecting here in
Sure.
order to emphasize this one that my heart is connected to, but isn't
Yeah.
necessarily the best option.
Yeah.
Um, so just really think on that. What's really funny is I went to many different people on
Mhm.
between the two storyboards, and the majority liked the garage sale more, but I still went with with the castle one. So
Yeah.
I mean, that also is telling.
Sure.
Definitely do what you like, but it's also important to just be aware of why you're doing what you like. And
Yeah.
again, I don't want you to always force yourself to do whatever will get you the best score. I think I
Mhm.
don't regret really submitting this one, even if I know that the score isn't
Sure.
ideal. It's
Mhm.
still a good score, and I think this is more representative of me as an artist, though.
Oh, that's
So
great.
I do care about this one more, and I mean, it's just
Yeah.
weighing that. That's really what made me make this choice. I was like, okay, I can do this other one. I just don't like it very much, and I
Sure.
prefer this one. I love it, and
Mhm.
that love drove me to do this, and I don't think that's bad. I
Yeah.
think you have to weigh your what's important to you.
Wow, that's super
Um,
wise. I actually just I love that. And honestly, I love this one too. I was the anti well, no, you were hearing lots of different opinions, but
yeah,
I like this one too from the beginning, just because I in my reasoning was that I felt like this one was probably too common. And it's funny because even among my other students, I did see quite a bit of like this kind of entrepreneurial business-minded fox being like, I'm going to make this thing successful. And
right,
so bringing money into it felt like, oh, that's like, I don't know, it's too obvious, you know?
yeah,
I guess I'm a fan of subtlety, and I like that this one is very clever, and I didn't see anyone even remotely approach this kind of idea. And I like the smallness of it, the sort of like macrocosm told through the microcosm of like it's just this little relationship moment between this sister
mm-hmm,
and her brother. And it's like a way of making a small opportunity happen. It's like a parent doing
yeah,
something for their kid that was above and beyond, you know? And so I thought that it's just, I don't know. And again, I can feel free to we can disagree with the portfolio review.
yeah,
I just think that this one is just super fun. And I don't know. I think I don't, yeah, again, I don't regret recommending this one. I think this one is solid. If I were to watch something, I would prefer to watch this one. So
well, thank
there we
you.
go.
Yeah, I
But
appreciate it.
yeah, nice to see your whole workflow, that's for sure. Holy, that's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Um, layouts. Layouts are next. Okay, crush this one. 15 out or 10 out of 10 or whatever. I think it's
I don't
15.
know.
But I'm so glad because wow, like just take this in, everyone. Just take this in for a moment.
Oh my
This
gosh,
is
thank
just
you.
like, and we can zoom in here if you really need. There's, look at these cars. Look at these cars in the background. This is just, yeah,
You.
this is fantastic. This is like ready to go into a, what's his name again? It's been a while.
Oh, that's LTAC Snapwag.
L-Tac Snapwager. Okay, so yeah, ready to see his feature film here.
Yeah,
So great.
it's a goofy name. So what's interesting is this one was my second thing that I had gotten done. And
Hmm.
then my exterior was one of the last things I got done. And you can
Okay.
kind of tell there's a difference in style.
Hmm.
I had not characterized the world of Eleanor Wagner when I made the first one, but I
Okay.
had in the second.
Yeah.
And so I think so these are connected to a pitch packet, which you will see
Yeah.
later.
Hmm.
And because of that, I just I had to give myself more time, I think, to make them match. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to match as like I was
Yeah.
worried about that, but I don't think you need it to.
No.
Um But if you'd want them to, if they're in the same story and you want the styles to be cohesive,
Hmm.
either do them both at the same time or develop it a little bit more before you
Sure.
do it. It's again, it's just managing priorities. You can be successful with either methods.
Yeah.
Um, but I had already made a map of the entire town, so I just had to redraw them at a different angle here.
Yeah.
So I already had that development built in here. I didn't have to make the layout of the town. I knew the layout of the town.
Sure.
If I had done that before I had made that map, that would have been a pain. I couldn't have pulled this one off.
Yeah.
Um, and so there is a level of, okay, is this a story that I'll be developing later in my portfolio? Or is this something that I just want a one-off cool environment that tells a story?
Hmm.
And I mean, it depends if your story is being developed over the time you're making your portfolio, like it was for me. I made most
Yeah.
of all of this in my gap year, and my pitch packet, the story was entirely generated during my gap year.
Yeah.
So I had to. It was in combo. It was in tandem. Like both.
Hmm.
Like I had to measure. Okay, this will require this much development of the story, so I have to wait until I have that development to do this.
Sure.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, if you're not doing a pitch packet and it's not connected to the pitch packet and it's just a standalone story, then go for it whenever.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that these are fun to whip out because they're very satisfying to do.
Hmm.
Um,
But also, I just want to mention that because you had this whole story developed, it meant that you were able to infuse both of these layouts with such a like this was so connected to a little world that you'd created. And I think that that value is really real. I think
thank you.
like just having it be like this is clearly a story. Like there's no doubt. You couldn't have just kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna draw a layout, you know? The story was a precursor requirement to this being as awesome as it was in my mind. And that's why
Oh,
like
thank
a
you.
lot of the stuff a lot that's kind of how I function with a lot of the courses I build really is like the story is first, everything else after. You know, like
Yeah,
have some idea that isn't just like I'm going to draw something cool. It's like, yeah, you can get by with doing that, but it's so great when everything can feel connected to a story. Like that just the thought put into this town is just incredible. And I
oh,
remember
thank
like
you.
it was equally this detailed on your map too. Like we're gonna see that in a moment. And I was just like, wow, this is I haven't seen such a thorough like it's just so well thought out. And I think that it's
Thank
hard to
you.
do that level of thinking had there not been a story involved or something, had it not been
Yeah,
connected to some larger purpose, I guess. So
yeah.
I also just want to ask Ilya, just a technical detail. You have an immense amount of detail in even the background lines. What was the size of this file?
Oh, that's
Oh, it
a
says right up here actually. 8,000. So you're at 8,000 pixels, 8232 by 5101 pixels. So
you
that is
know,
a giant file.
for me, I've actually been working on shrinking it because I have multiple digital paintings, which we'll see later, that are over 10,000
Yeah.
pixels wide. So yeah, I mean this I like big canvases. My
Yeah.
computer does not thank me for that, but
Me
if your
too.
computer can handle it, I like crisp lines.
Yeah.
I'm a
Oh,
bit of a crisp line
I think
snob, I guess.
you and I are both allergic to pixels. We don't
Yeah.
really ever like to think that there are pixels there at all. And it's just, we're just working in a vector landscape, everyone.
Oh
Don't
heck
ask
yeah,
any
yeah.
further.
What can we say?
Yeah, and this too, like even as far back as this, and we're still getting these beautiful lines. So yeah, I mean, I love it too. Especially because, and this is more of a thing for later, but the nice thing about working so large is that if you were directing this and this was an actual layout in the film, you can zoom in, you can cut, you can crop, you can modify after, and you've got
Yeah,
ample room to do so because you've got so much pixel density. If you, some people just draw it at 1920 by 1080, and I'm like, oh, that makes me feel anxious just thinking about it because I'm
yeah,
like, you can't move the camera at all. Like that's totally
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. So this is I just want to mention that because it is beautifully crisp and yeah, has a nice
Thank
effect and
you.
wow, just you can just keep going. You can just keep looking at details. It's so great.
Uh, I've
There
drawn a
she
lot
is.
of those little trees. Hey, old Les McProng, fishing up her mail.
Yeah. Speaking of, so that is the layout. So personal work time, which I'm very excited about.
Here we go.
Where should I be? Should I begin with one, I guess?
Yes, that's the pitch packet.
Okay, great. So tell us about the story, Aaliyah.
Well, if you scroll down, we have a introductory. A cent can go a long way, at least it can in the eyes of Eleanor Wagner and her four friends, founders of the Copper Coin, a club which daily offers ridiculous and often useless services for the cost of 1 cent. The goal is simple: help support their families which have fallen into harder times. With yellow legal notepad, wagon, and frogs in tow, the gang of friends are off on many goofy, wacky, and whimsical adventures. Care to join? And it has tired of pants, we can make them short makers. And Lily Lee is like, I don't care if he's saying no, we're making him shorts. So
That's great. I love that he's like in mid-stride and she's already working on it. That's
yeah.
a great little animated moment there. Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is a story that takes place in like rough 1930s in Canada, which is funny. I'm American and I'm like trying to get into a Canadian school and I make a story about Canada. So with that, that
Yeah.
was fun. It's like uh Canadian up in like countryside source. It was originally in a tundra, but then I changed it to be just more like a woodland area. So
Mm.
yeah,
Wow.
this is Eleanor Wagner. She's the star of the show.
Mhm.
Um, her concepts, that's her original design, and then she went through a few transformations to get where she is now.
That's
Um,
great that you included that.
and yeah, and then that's her mom.
Mhm.
This is Eltax Knapwager, which was the original character who formed this entire story.
He was
He,
so different in the beginning.
yes, but he basically were like, you have to make a character, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I brainstormed a story of a car salesman who buys a bunch of cars and goes up to a remote town in the tundra and tries to sell cars, but no one wants cars, and so he ends up being bankrupt. And then his neighbors, which end up being Eleanor Wagner and her mom, take him berry picking, and he's trying to go just to sell them a car, but he goes anyways, and then he gets berries and he ends up making jam out of it, and then he becomes a renowned jam maker and uses the cars to deliver jam. So
That's I didn't remember that detail. I also love, and I want to mention that like the shape of the houses reflects the character designs, right?
yes,
That's so great.
thank you.
Wow. Also, beautiful layouts. Like how you presented this is super professional, and I think that's worth
Oh,
mentioning
thank you.
too. So wonderful. Here are the kids.
Yes, Eleanor's friends. All of our are loosely based off of family and friends that I know.
Oh,
Theodore
great.
Biker is my stepdad
Huh.
through and through. So I love that. And then William Willis is my brother very much.
Nice.
So
That's
so
great.
I just like, yeah, it's fun.
Here she
It just
is.
adds life to it. Yeah, old Les McProm.
Up on her little mountaintop. And
Oh
it's
heck
nice
yes.
how we can so clearly tell that oh, this actually is the layout. I just realized that is the same
Yeah,
angle. Okay, cool. So yeah, nice that it feels, we can easily associate it with that. Nice.
thank
Just
you.
some story sketches. Here it is. Wow. I was just so blown away by this. Just like it's not just like a map with like dots and little squares on it. It's like, wow. Like, take this Google Earth. Holy, this is just
Thank you.
incredibly well detailed and
I also it's very fun to name things. I like the
yeah.
Parapiffle Peaks the most. I think that's like
Hmm.
really fun.
I remember, oops, that doesn't zoom in. I remember this area with the three bridges. That was
Yes.
the critical spot. And then here she is over here. So it's funny. So your layout takes place like up in this area, looking
Yeah.
back this way. So that's great. Wow, so great. This is
Eleanor
nice.
Wagner.
And I love the two different kind of styles here of painting and rendering. It's almost like a concept like we could go either way, TV show production company. Um,
Thank you.
but it's
Yeah,
great.
it was fun. That was the first one I did, and then I did um others in that similar story style, though I didn't spend as much time on the digital painting because that one
Mm,
took about a week.
sure.
And I was like, that's not sustainable when I'm doing other
Sure.
one.
Yeah.
So they're still painted, but a little faster.
Yeah. Nice. I
Oh,
remember at one
yes.
point you were considering redoing all the cars in your layout because you've made them more cartoony. So, and whereas your layout, they're quite realistic. And I was like, No, no, it's okay. Don't worry about that. Let's keep moving.
Yeah, I really was considering redoing that interior because I was like, it doesn't match, but I really don't think, and like Garth assured me, it doesn't
Yeah,
really matter that
yeah.
they don't match.
It's also somewhat risky, I would say, to do a layout in a very exaggerated kind of wonky style. It's fine for this when you're doing concept pieces, but a layout when you're trying to prove your knowledge of perspective, it would be somewhat
Mm,
risky to do something that's kind of a wonky perspective, I guess. But
interesting. That's a
aside
good
from that,
point.
yeah, nice. Oh yeah, a little storyboard of the animation, which we're going to see next.
You never saw this one, but
I
this
did
is
see
an
this one. Wow.
it's
Huh.
an episode concept. Billy Brooks passingly remarks that he has a raccoon infestation in his backyard. Eleanor, hoping for a penny, formulates a plan with William Willis to rid Billy of his unwelcome neighbors. Without Billy Brooks knowing, the pair sneak into Sniffletiff's cave and lure Sniffletiff, a black bear with an always running nose, out with some tundra wildberries. Hoping he will eat the raccoons, Eleanor and William Willis end up finding themselves in a much different situation than expected.
Oh, wow. Awesome. As if you needed one more piece in this pitch package. I
Oh
love that. You're like, and here's an episode that's ready to go. Awesome.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So here we've got your animation. Oh wow, I didn't see this little cover too.
So this is the only animation of all of these that I did this year. And it's just like a little concept piece of Eleanor. Always show progress. Really recommend it. I didn't have
Yes,
it for my older animations, but I had it here, and I think it's definitely worthwhile.
that's great.
Um, and then these are just ones from the past because I've been animating for a little bit, and was like, okay, I'll submit them because they seem to want them now, according to like the instructions. Like they
Yeah.
kind of purposefully mentioned it, so I was like, okay, great, I'll do it.
Yeah. They added a lot to the animation description in the personal work. So yeah, I think that was just this year, 2024.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had heard previously that you're not supposed to submit animation unless it's been like really helped by a professional. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I don't, guess I won't. But then to this year, they were like, no, please, here's a bunch of rules on how to do it. You should do it.
Sure.
And so I was like, okay, cool, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll watch this one more time. I do love this progress work. It's so great.
Thank you.
Yeah. You had a little bit more, and I remember we cut a few of them, not a whole lot.
Hmm.
A lot of this I was like, keep it in, keep it in. That's great. The voice. Nice.
Run cycles and walk cycles, I
Yeah,
think, are valuable to put in if you have them.
definitely. Wow, that's great. And then yeah, you've got
Mm,
this whole
this,
piece, of course.
yeah, I I was like, okay, I'm gonna chop up and only put parts of it in. But since it's not really animation and more like a storyboard animatic of sorts, I was like, I mean, there's parts of it that are animated. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. So I worked over on this for like a year and a half as like a side personal
Wow.
project before I even knew I was going to Sheridan. Um,
Yeah.
and so I was like, okay, well, I can put it in there, but
Hmm.
yeah. So it was just kind of, I was like, okay, I guess it's worth it.
Oh, definitely. It's so clear. Sometimes animatics and storyboards of students can be a little rougher. Like it's kind of like you really need to try to see what's going on, but this is super, super clear. So
Thank you.
that's great.
I I really wanted to include it just because I wanted to show that I could use the camera in Toon Boom, and that's about it. I was like, okay, I can show
Nice.
I can do it.
Yeah.
I hope that it helps at all. But I mean, the style changes quite a bit. It's not necessarily the keystone of my work, but
Sure.
I'm still glad it's there. So
Yeah. It is different than your animated work too, in that you're yeah, like you said, you're able to do more with the camera and so you got some cool transitions in there too. So
thank you.
wow, really great. Okay, so let's see your other. Oh yeah, okay, so some
My
oh,
sketchbook.
beautiful sketchbook. Yeah, I remember this. Some anatomy studies, environment studies. This was for one of our weeks of homework, I think.
Yes, it was. And then I made it into a sketchbook page. I was like,
Yeah,
okay, we can just put it there. Because it
that's
wasn't a
great.
sketchbook, it was just in a different sketchbook. So,
Yeah, nice. This is a great idea. If you already are going somewhere, like make it into this little fun page layout like this. That's great.
hmm
It's, some different environments and objects. That's great.
Fun
Nice.
trees. Love me
Yeah.
some trees.
I am so glad that you did some like nature designs. I don't see this nearly enough. Everyone always goes to the glamorous things, the characters, the full environments, but there's also these elements that are often need to be designed in animated films. And yeah, it's nice to have some nature designs. In fact, I'm making a course specifically on this because I love it so much and I want more students to do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Then these are
Oh,
kind of
nice.
like, yeah, so this is was like a concept. It didn't really fit with the digital paintings, and it's like it was a sort of sketchbook because it's just
Mhm.
ideas that I wanted to try, like merging
Sure.
different stories, different styles with a story, and
Yeah.
kind of just like try something new, see how it could have fit into an animation in the bottom
Sure.
too.
Hmm.
Um, and so I was like, okay, it kind of counts as a sketchbook, even if it's more refined, more like a concept piece.
Yeah.
And then my second page digital of the digital sketchbook is just color studies.
Sure.
So I do recommend putting these in. They're always gonna be like cool to people,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it just
If you
shows.
know,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, I was just saying if you people out watching this are like, whoa, that looks familiar, it's because you watch Light Ponderings, the YouTube channel too. That's
Mm,
how I got into doing it last year.
great.
So definitely recommend following Light Ponderings too. Just like he teaches you how to do color studies, and
Great.
it really, really helped me. So I do recommend it.
That's great. We'll put a shout out to him in the description. And I love this how much you break down how you got there, both in the sketch, the possible scenes, which are all nicely labeled. I'm a big fan of labeling and description. Everyone who knows that
Thank you.
has worked with me. But even the mosaic, I remember like it was quite a task to figure out how to achieve that. And you're like, and when you see the overall thing, you're like, something's going on, but it has this little shimmer. And then so of course, let's see the close up of how you got that
Yeah,
effect. That's so great.
thank you.
Okay, awesome. And then your
And
final one.
then finally, yeah, so these were just digital
Oh,
paintings I did last year. And I was like, okay, I'll just
th-
put them in there too. So,
I love this one. I know I've said this a million times, but I absolutely love this one. I think it's so fun. And the last time we looked at this together, I remember you pointed out something that we're gonna zoom into because this is
okay.
amazing. So for everyone watching, like, it's they're in this little hangout here, and that's fun. But get ready. Hold on to your seats. Like look at and now I need the hand, which I don't. Oh, here we go. I can just hit square. Look at back there. There's another little book gathering happening here. Oh, wow. Adobe is clunky.
I know you're
But
good.
there's a little couple mouse having a little gathering right back in that area. It's kind of the same thing that's happening in the foreground, and I just love that you included that.
Thank
That's the kind
you.
of thing that in kids illustration, kids book illustration, like they love because kids always notice those kinds of things.
Yeah,
They'll notice that thing so far back. So that's so great. What a great little detail.
thank you.
Okay, let's see the rest of these. Wow, another epic one. This was one of the first ones I saw of your artworks generally, and I was like, holy, this is such a epic, like the perspective and yeah, it's just so much going on here. It's really great.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad there was and it's nice to get both intense environment and, some close-ups of people. So
Yeah,
a great mixture. Loud storytelling piece, which is really great too.
thank you.
Awesome. Wow. I'm just going a little bit faster, so it's not quite as long for folks to watch, but these
No,
are
you're good.
so great. Oh wow, you did include this one. Great.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, at this point, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, okay, that's it totally makes sense." Like this is just
You're too kind.
incredible work. Wow. Okay, well, I've got those last couple questions to ask you here.
Alrighty.
Let's see. One second, where are they? Sorry, just 1 second. Here it is. Okay. So if you could do the whole thing again, Aaliyah, what would you do differently?
Well, I do think I would do a whole lot more arm stretches because at one point in December, my arm got really hurt. I don't know if it was from overuse or from something else, but I
Sure.
couldn't draw and it was just like I had to rest. I went into a phase of like, I'm gonna teach my left hand how to draw. Of course, it was impractical, but I was like desperate, so I was trying. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, hand stretches. I already was trying to take a walk every day. I did other personal duties, and I really do recommend that to people keeping healthy routines in.
Yeah.
So eat every meal, sleep well, hang out with people, like eat
Hmm.
dinner with your family if you're living with your family still. Go for walks, yeah, and meet up with people. Even if it's just running the groceries and getting the groceries instead of ordering them to come to your door. I think just getting out, seeing the world really, really helps rejuvenate your creative process and also gives your hands and mind a break.
Wow.
So yeah, more arm stretches. Really do recommend doing arm stretches to everyone.
Hmm.
Um, and I would also just start doing the figure drawing sooner.
Sure.
um,
Wow, I'm so glad that you touched on like just actual wellness generally. Like that's so rarely said when I ask that question, and I think that's so important as someone that didn't have an all-nighter all through college because I planned my time well.
yeah,
I'm a big, big fan of like work-life balance.
heck
So
yeah.
that's really great to hear.
I agree. I averaged in the start, like my average was about 3 to 4 hours a day. Near
Yeah,
the end, it got more into like 6 to 7 was generally. But that
sure,
was only for a month. And I think that you can sustain it better at that time because I was like, okay, I'm not doing a bunch of errands.
yeah,
So during my gap year, as a way to quote unquote pay rent, I wasn't working a full-time job, but my family let me live here as long as I was able to run some errands and stuff. So
sure,
I would have time to do that. Near the end, though, I was able to clear that off so I could just work for that final month in February. And so that's
great.
why my amount of time went up. But you can accomplish a lot of stuff even in like 3 to 4 hours a day.
Yeah,
And that's
that's
just
great.
weekdays. I took weekends off.
Great. You were very diligent about your time during the week, though. I remember you had it like marked out so precisely, and you were very good at that. So that's
Thank you.
great and worth mentioning. And was there some advice that someone gave you that was critical?
Um, well, it was mainly you giving me permission to slow down. Um, because in particularly during the start, I just was like, I'm not gonna get there in time.
Hmm.
Even though it was September, and I know that's kind of ridiculous, but I think at least for me, because I'm sort of someone who just will go too far into giving all in.
Sure.
Like it was really helpful to hear you say, no, it's okay to slow down sometimes. And I think it was really necessary to
Great.
at times. And I think you do have to measure, okay, is this stress that I'm putting myself through that, oh, I'm so like that irrational fear of, oh my gosh, I'm so close to the deadline when you're not necessarily, and you need to just take a deep breath, slow down, take a break. Like December, I kind of had to take off when I was already planning to take 2 days off, 2 weeks off for family and Christmas.
Sure.
But I ended up having to take most of it off because of my arm. And I was like, no, this is awful. I'm so behind.
Hmm.
Um, but I was fine. And you were like, Aaliyah, you're fine. It's
Yeah.
okay. You can slow down. Um,
Yeah.
and so, yes, stay on top of it, but also don't let yourself get into the headset of just I got to keep producing every second of every day.
Sure.
And it's never enough. It is enough, and there is a limit. I probably made a bit too much at times. Like I have a very full portfolio, very
Hmm.
large, and it's not necessarily all necessary.
Sure.
Um, did I submit it all? Yeah, I mean, I did.
Yeah.
But it's okay if you don't have a gazillion paged PDF for every one of your personal works. Like that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I mean, I really like these last two pieces, but I remember there was this moment where like, do you need it? Like you're probably
Yeah,
gonna get perfect without them. But I mean, whatever. it's nice too. I mean, there's no problem. I mean, it's yeah. They wouldn't take a
Hmm.
mark off for having too much work, I guess. But at the same time, yeah, if you're feeling like you're just compelling yourself to do more and more and more, then absolutely. There's like,
Right.
okay, do you really need it? Like maybe your time is better
Yeah.
spent to just like recover or something, like just
Yeah.
something else.
I also liked what you said with the sketchbook. It was really kind of huge. I was like, okay, what do I do with my sketchbook? Because it was
Hmm.
kind of hard for me to assemble one.
Sure.
It was kind of in shambles. I was like, I don't know what to do. And you were giving suggestions, and then at the end you were like, but it's kind of hard for me to tell you what to do. It's supposed to just be like emblematic of you, like what you like to do.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of freedom for you to do what you want. And so that's when I made the Garden of Eden one because I went for a walk and I was like, okay, what do I actually want to make? Like what am I actually interested in making? And so this
Sure.
was produced out of that. I was like, this is what I actually really want to pursue. Like I want to try something like this.
Cool.
And I think that was also really good. I think a lot of times in Sheridan, in particular in like the portfolio making process, the sketchbooks do it's kind of like have the fancy layout, make the pretty colors and the observational drawings stick out in a cool artsy way.
Hmm.
Um, which you can do and it looks nice and it's not necessarily bad, especially if you naturally sketch that way.
Hmm.
But I wasn't like super enthused about that. And since it's supposed to show you, I really was like, okay, I'm definitely at least including this one piece that I really, really do
Sure.
love and is really something I'm interested in pursuing.
Yeah.
And so that piece of advice from you was really great. I was like,
Mm.
okay, that what do I actually want to do? And just ask yourself that with your storyboard, like your sketchbook, like, is this emblematic of what I really do like to do? I do
Yeah.
like studying anatomy. I really do like studying buildings for some reason. Like I just really like it.
Yeah.
So I have some of those. And nature and stuff. It's less character oriented in my sketchbook.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, just generally I think that was a really good point.
Mm.
So
Great. And do you feel like anything in your portfolio gave you a particular edge up on the competition this year?
frankly, time. I
Yeah.
think it was a huge advantage that I had an entire gap year to dedicate to it. I wasn't
Hmm.
balancing another job. I wasn't balancing school.
Yeah.
I didn't apply to any colleges my senior year of high school, and I was like, okay, I need a gap year regardless of where I go. I'm just going to take a gap year. And so I did. And then at the end of senior year, I discovered Sheridan. I was like, okay, I really want to, this portfolio looks like something I could try to get done in the gap year. And so I
Hmm.
dedicated my gap year to doing it. And I hired Garth. I was kind of scrambling. I was like, hey, what do other people do to prepare for this? Because it's not really, you don't really share, oh, this is where I was and what I was doing during it. So
Yeah.
I was like, is it weird to take a gap year? But I did. It was my course of action, and because I had so much time I could dedicate to it, I have
Sure.
files upon files of planning and effort
Yeah.
and things like that. So I was able to really finesse my portfolio to be where I wanted it to be, and that was
Yeah.
definitely a major advantage just simply because I had the opportunity to take a gap year.
Yeah. That's great. And I mean, you're right. And I say this so much, like it's hard to do all this during high school. I know a few people that somehow managed it, but
Yeah, it's
um,
crazy.
it's a lot. It makes a lot of sense to have a gap year, and no one should feel bad about that. It's like totally fine. I mean, there used to be a grade 13 back in the day, so
Yeah.
um, it makes sense that you have a year to just kind of find out what you want to do and spend a good amount like but you really have to be dedicated about it. And I think that's part of the role that maybe I play for you and others is just that
Mm-hmm.
I created a sense of accountability, I guess. Even if I said nothing in my feedback and I was just there to see it and to record
Yeah.
that you did it, it's like even that has like the accountability of that is great and that helps people do produce the work if somebody's going to be there some kind of teacher to like look at your work and be like okay I see that
Oh,
you've
for
done this
sure.
is great. So yeah, I'm glad that it worked out and I'm really glad that I was able to teach you, Aaliyah.
Yeah, thank
um
you so much.
yeah, of course. The final and very fun question, with unlimited resources and staff at your disposal, what would be the animated production that you would make?
Well, I mean, it's kind of obvious the answer would be the copper coin, but
Hmm.
um, I mean, that show would be fun to make, but
Yeah.
I do have like a lot of more abstract conceptual films that I think would be kind of cool. Like the
Yeah.
ones, like the concept art that you saw that I was talking
Sure.
about in my sketchbook. Like, I think it would be really cool to make something merging 3D and 2D and
Mm,
like texture, like mosaics. I really like
sure.
mosaics now.
Yeah.
And
That's
other
so
things
great.
and like different art forms, right? Because that's a merge of East Asian painting and Byzantine mosaics. And like,
Hmm.
I just think that would be really fun. Different, like more flat styles than 3D styles, and then
Yeah.
kind of moving and creating depth with that. I think that would be really fun.
That's great.
So something like that, and
Awesome.
or the copper coin. So
Yeah. Wonderful.
yeah,
Oh, well, so great. It's so great to see your portfolio, and I'm sure everyone watching is just like, wow, 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 wow.
thank
This
you.
score absolutely makes sense. So just one more time, we'll look at this number sheet before you can put it away forever and never look at it again. But well, thanks so much for doing this interview, Aaliyah. It's been so
Yes.
great to, and also thanks for bringing your process. It was so great to see like the steps along the way too. So I
Oh yeah, of
really
course.
really appreciate that and just seeing your whole workflow and wow, it's so
Thank you
awesome.
so much for everything you've done for me. This portfolio was greatly aided by you. So
Oh,
thank you, thank you,
wonderful.
thank you.
That's great to hear. Awesome. Well, good luck at Sheridan next year. You won't need it,
Thank
but I
you.
can't wait to see the kind of work you make.
Thank you. And good luck to anyone who is aiming to apply this coming year, the next year, however many
Absolutely.
years.
Yeah.
Got this. Just keep giving it your best and it'll work out. So,
Yeah.
one way or the other. So,
Great.
thank you so
Awesome.
much.
All right. Take care, Leah.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.